Hey, cool kids. Welcome back into the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm excited to have you back on and joining me this week to talk about some important stuff that really affects grandfathers as well as our grandchildren. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you a great way to help out the podcast is to go over to my web store, check out the great merchandise, including my children's book, and make a purchase. Celebrate the grandfather in your life, or if you're a cool grandpa, be sure to pick out something that celebrates you being a unique and special grandfather. Now, what if the most powerful thing you could say to your grandchild was nothing at all? Now, I want you to stay with me here, and I want you to just think about this. What if the most powerful thing you could say to your grandchild was nothing at all? Today, we're talking about something deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful: how we talk, and more importantly, how we listen to our grandchildren. You know, this episode was inspired by entrepreneur and investor Codie Sanchez. And she's a contrarian thinker who built her career helping people in private equity and then has evolved into buying her own businesses as well as teaching other people how to think differently about money, business, and life. I really enjoy her podcast, and I'm going to have a link to that in my show notes. As I listened to her ideas about a month or so ago about communication, I realized something. This gift of communication isn't just for CEOs or entrepreneurs. This is exactly what grandpas need. Okay, so I want you to follow along with me and just imagine taking some of these things that we learned in business school or learned just through, the school of hard knocks, and be able to rethink about these concepts into how you react and how you interact with your grandchildren as well as your adult children. Now, let's start with why we as grandpas tend to talk so much in the first place. Here's the truth. Most of us talk a lot because we care. We've lived longer, we've seen mistakes, and we want to protect the kids we love, our grandkids and our adult kids too. So we explain, we advise, we warn, and we teach. But what feels like wisdom to us can feel like pressure to them. Think about it for a second. Somebody's coming to you with an issue, with a concern, with something that, just really is on their mind. And immediately we switch into kind of manager mode, fixer mode, whatever that mode is that you have inside you that wants to jump in and contribute and create a solution. That may not always be the best thing for us to do, especially with our grandchildren. Today's kids and teens live in a world of fast information, short attention spans, and constant noise. When we talk for 5 minutes straight, their brains check out, even if their hearts don't. The connection doesn't die because we talk. It dies because we don't listen. We move way too fast with our conversations, and we don't take time to really understand what's going on. So what does science and even Codie's thinking teach us about building meaningful connections? One of Codie's big lessons was that presence is more powerful over pressure. And what this means to us is that just being in the room, sitting next to somebody, I always use the analogy of on a riverbank with a fishing pole right next to the grandkid. Just our presence there means so much. We share that energy. We share that calming force that we all have as grandfathers or can have. And I'll admit it depends on how much caffeine, how the day's gone, and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to little kids and our grandkids, whether they're little or they're big, just our presence alone can have more of an effect over the pressure that they might feel from us talking about their problems and trying to come up with a decision for them. People decide whether they feel safe with you before deciding whether they agree with you. You need to really slow down when we're talking with our grandchildren, especially about issues that are of importance to them. And that importance could be anything from a lost toy all the way up to a breakup, all the way up to not getting into a college that they wanted or losing a job that they have. That pressure, that key moment in their life is very intense and very full of emotion. And we have the opportunity as grandfathers and even, I would say, grandmothers to be able to slow things down and use our calm voice as a lighthouse for those kids. If we can remember to stay calm, they can be honest. If you're rushed, those kids are going to shut down. And we find that the same thing with our business associates, with anybody that we work with. If people are feeling rushed, they're going to want to just take immediate action without really thinking of the consequences or even necessarily a long-term solution. They're just going to hear something, you're going to give a suggestion that really may or may not be applicable to them. They're going to take action, and then they're going to have to live with those results. I mean, this is one of the blessings and one of the curses of being a grandfather and grandparent, is that when we give advice, when we give guidance to our adult kids as well as the grandkids, they take it, they have to live with the consequences. Many times we don't have to. So when we are calm, when we let our presence communicate for us, it really allows them to think through what they're doing. Another insight that comes to mind is that attention spans come in short bursts. And when we're talking with somebody, we need to make sure that we're using the idea of impact and the idea of short duration versus a long soliloquy, right? What everybody remembers about that lesson regarding the Gettysburg Address is that there was this orator that went on before Lincoln. I think the guy talked for about 2 hours. I'm not exactly sure, so go to Wikipedia, look it all up. And then Lincoln gives up, and his Gettysburg Address is like 2.5 minutes, 2.5, 3 minutes, right? And sits down, and then everybody is like, holy crap, that dude just gave us his heart, gave us such inspiration, gave us such belief in the cause that we have going on right now in that short amount of time. That's what really stuck. The other speeches were probably great. They probably had all sorts of examples going back to ancient Rome, because that was really popular at the time. Ancient Greece, they probably talked about all sorts of things and were probably great, but those things lasted about 2 hours. So when we're talking and we're letting our presence and our calm voices really connect with our grandchildren, we got to hit them in short bursts, 5 to 10 seconds. Those long lectures get lost on everybody, including adults. Our grandkids don't need that sermon from us. What they need is moments of connections. And here's the magic. Questions create dopamine. Curiosity literally lights up the brain. The more that you can ask questions, the more that you can get somebody talking, get them thinking, the more that dopamine is hitting them. And that dopamine is kind of a feel-good chemical. And again, I'm not a big doctor. I don't know everything about everything, but I know enough that that dopamine hit that you get is the thing that wants to trigger you to keep doing more of an activity, right? So when we engage in asking I'm going to say leading questions, but they're really probing questions, not yes, no, but really tell me more about this. What do you think about that? how does this scenario play out if you make this decision? That curiosity gets them going and it starts to get them pumped up, especially if they're having a really bad time and maybe there's some depression, some anger, some negative feelings there. You asking questions show that you care about them and that's actually starts a little bit of a chemical reaction going on inside. So remember, advice shuts doors, questions opens them. Which brings us to the heart of today's episode, the 3-2-1 grandpa rule. And yes, I'm totally taking this off of Codie's podcast from earlier. And again, I'll link to that. But remember, 3-2-1. Step one, try to pause for 3 seconds. When your grandchild says something very emotional, pause for 3 seconds. Let that emotion actually have time to breathe. Now, that was about 3 seconds there. It felt like a long time on my side. On your side, as you're listening to this, it probably didn't sound that long. But what it does is it gives people time to think. It gives people time to let out that emotion without immediately re-engaging. And during that, when you come out of that pause, is very important not to think of a clever answer, not to prepare for a lecture, but to show them that they matter. Remember, we're taking a pause and then we're going in and we're going to start asking some questions, get them going, get that dopamine flowing, get the ideas going. Silence is actually leadership. And silence is how grandfathers really show an understanding that their grandchildren are important because we're letting their words actually lie in the conversation, right? And what I mean by that is we talk and our words hit us certain ways and our words will hit them certain ways. When you give pause, when you give some silence, it allows their energy to breathe a little bit. They're not trying to keep fueling that fire that, especially in a very high emotional state, it gives them a chance to take a breath. They may have just realized that they said something that may have been inappropriate, may have been more exaggerated emotionally than what they're actually feeling. And I am 100% guilty of this myself. When I get very emotional, my language gets very extreme. So it goes from being, hey, honestly, I feel annoyed to, oh my gosh, I hate this thing. I wish a meteor would hit this person on the head. I'm done with it. Right. And truth be told, they annoyed me a little bit. Or my energy and what I'm actually experiencing isn't quite to the level of what my language is. But my wife, Karen, is great at letting me talk and then giving me that silence. And not the silent treatment, but giving me silence and allowing me to hear my words. And so that pause that we have gives us a chance to let our grandchildren really hear what they're saying and really understand the words and the communication that they're delivering to us and that they're sharing with us. I mean, gosh, how many times as grandparents, we want to know every little thing that's going on in their lives. And then in a moment where we can exercise some real family leadership, we just steamroll over them and we do all the talking and we give lectures and sermons instead of letting their words have air and letting them breathe and letting them understand what it is that they're feeling and then having them understand that we're listening to them. So the second step is to give reflections. And we talked about that a little bit. So instead of advice, reflect on what you heard. And I'm going to do a little bit of role playing for a second, right? So let's say the grandchild is going to say, school just sucks. It's awful. It's the worst thing ever. So as a grandfather, we might say, wow, it sounds like you had a really overwhelming day and maybe frustrating. And then we take a pause, right? And that's it. We're not fixing, we're not doing stories, we're just understanding and we're empathizing to an extent, right? And then step 3 is to ask one open ended question. So in this example, we're just going to ask one question and we're going to be slow about it. And one of the examples could be, what has been the hardest part? Or what was the hardest part of school? And then maybe some of the other ones could be that we ask just these open ended, slow questions would be, what do you wish that as adults understood about how your school day went? And then we could even ask, do you want some advice or just somebody to listen? This is one I use quite a bit, I think, with family, especially, and with friends, is I really do try to check in and go, do you just want me to be a cheerleader and listen to what you're saying and tell you that I agree how awful that person is that was on Interstate 66 that cut you off between Manassas and Centerville? Because I can do that. Or do you want me to try to work with you to come up with a solution to this? And when they answer, it's really important that you don't interrupt. So I wanted to walk through a few real moments. And these are examples, okay? So with the situation of a grandchild coming back, what we can do is we just went through is give some pause, reflect, and then ask, wow, that sounded like a tough day. What is it that you wish adults really understood about how tough of a day you had? Are you looking for some advice on how to fix it and how to have a better day tomorrow? Or do we just need to spend some time being angry and frustrated and talking about how frustrated we are? The next one could be something similar, with older grandkids, um, their first heartbreak. If they can share with you, maybe they share with you a little bit more than mom and dad. An example of this could be like, man, it sounds like you really hurt. Tell me what feels the hardest about what you're going through. And then, as an example, with maybe something, if you have teen withdrawal, and I'm not talking that they're super busy and they can't talk to you, they're too busy taking pictures for Instagram or whatever. But when teens get depressed, when they start to withdraw, when they cut off friends, when they stop talking to mom and dad, they may still be talking to you, even if it's through text messages or instant messaging. And so, in that case, what I would suggest is asking those open ended questions. For example, you seem really distant lately. What's been on your mind? Not, hey, I haven't heard from you. What's going on? And then asking a bunch of details about school and about friends and a bunch of everything. If they're withdrawing, you need to just, one, acknowledge that they seem distant, and then two, what's been on your mind. And remember, you're using that 3-2-1. So maybe it's, in the case of a text message, back and forth, it could be you send out a text, wow, I haven't heard from you for a while, and you don't follow up with that for hours or a day or two. And then maybe you prompt in again with, hey, what's been on your mind? What have you been thinking about lately? And maybe what you even do with that could be something along the lines of, what do you think about current event X, right? We have the Olympics going on. So it might be like, hey, have you been watching any of the Olympics? Open ended questions. Although, have you been watching the Olympics tends to be yes or no. But maybe you ask, what's your favorite Olympic sport that you've been watching? And then that starts a conversation, right? But you're using that pause, you're using the questions, and then you're just getting in there and you're giving really short pieces of advice. So every time that you use this 3-2-1 methodology, you're really telling your grandchild that you're safe here. I'm not going to bulldoze you. I'm not going to solve the world's problems for you. And you're smart enough to do that. But you're also saying, I'm here for you as a tool, as a resource to help you with whatever it is. Even if it's finding a lost toy, or the cat's run away, or the dog's missing, or whatever it is that's super critical, super intense in that grandchild's life, using these steps is going to help them feel safe, feel connected, and feel heard. So here's what happens when you listen like the way we're talking about here. You build trust, not tension. You create conversations and not lectures, right? And that's what we want as grandparents, is that back and forth. We love that stuff. You become the adult they come back to because they're safe, because they feel heard, and they have a connection for you. Grandchildren are not going to remember everything we say. I don't remember everything my grandfather said. Um, you know, they're never going to remember everything that we talk about. But the thing that they're going to remember, and the thing I want you to take away from this, is they will remember how safe they felt when they said things to us. So, as I wrap up, here's the cool grandpa challenge this week. Use this 3-2-1 rule in just one conversation. And if you're not talking with your grandkids like every day, every week, use it with somebody in your network. Practice it. Pause for a 3 count, reflect twice, and then ask one question. And remember, those reflections are, wow, sounds like that really hurts. Wow, this sounds like it really broke your heart. Wow, this sounds like some really awesome good news. Not everything that we're talking about here has to be with negative connotations. It could be kids are super excited to tell you about the A+ they got on a science paper that they tried their absolute hardest on, and it finally happened. They got the A, right? So celebrate those wins, but you can use the same process for those wins as well. And then what I want you to do is, after you use that 3 count, reflect twice and ask one question. Notice what happens. And here's the thing. I want you to be sure that you understand that you may be changing things up a little bit, and you're not going to be perfect with this process at all. So I'm going to create a handout, a reflection sheet that's going to be part of the show notes. You can download it, have it on your desk. It'll be a document you can put on your desktop, on your computer, whatever it is, something that helps prompt you to start to use this a little bit more. And if you're in a business setting or volunteer setting, whatever it is that you're doing, try using this with your colleagues. They're going to start to feel safe. They're going to start to feel heard, and they're going to start to really think that you are, I don't know what the right word would be, but you're insightful, let's say, because they're feeling safe that they can come to you. They're feeling that you're understanding their anxiety, their frustration, that you're celebrating with them with good news, and that you ask really good questions that help them think through whatever's going on. So be sure to use this in both the setting with the grandkids as well as your work life, your outside of the family situations, because I think this is a really winning combination. And like I said, I'm going to put the link to the episode that I heard Codie talking about into the show notes. So after you listen to this, click on that, go check her out. She explains things a lot more with the dopamine and with some of the science behind what we're trying to talk about. I'm trying to talk about the heart here, but she does a great job of talking about that science part and about why it's so important to do the 3-2-1. Look, if this episode has helped you out, what I'd love for you to do is share it with another grandparent who wants to build a real connection and not just demand respect from the grandchildren, but really earn it and build that bridge. So I want to thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa podcast. I had a blast having this chance to be with you and connect with you. I hope you take some of this to heart and be sure to try it out this week. That's the Cool Grandpa Challenge for you. So until next time, remember to stay cool.